Sasha, BFA Fashion Design, Parsons 2007, is a highly creative career strategist with over 15 years of experience in fashion, higher education, recruitment, and organizational development. Ilana Labourene, BFA Photography, Parsons 2008. Alana holds accredited coaching certifications in health from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and in executive coaching from the International Coaching Federation. And now, Sasha and Alana, before we get started, I'd love for you both to unmute yourselves and just tell us a little bit about your time at the new school. Sasha, why don't you go first?
Yes. So hello everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you may be, whether it's remote or not on campus yet. Yes, I have a long standing with the new school. I'm originally from Colorado, and made the trek up to New York to attend Parsons School of Design exclusively. As was stated earlier, I graduated in '07. This was before the school was even updated as moderately as it is now. And I was in the 40th 7th Avenue building. Now they've knocked that down since, so a little bit of FOMO there. Um, and I actually returned, made a full circle. I've done many pivots in my career, and I made a full circle and came back to the new school where it was undergoing a little bit of a change where academic advisors were separated from career advisors, but then they didn't have an alumni advisor. So I came back part-time as an alumni advisor and worked with all five schools under the new school. And what I found interesting, it were a lot of the creatives that I were working with that came out of Parsons exclusively. I then parlayed that into a full-time opportunity where I worked as a student success advisor for Parsons exclusively, where I'd worked with fashion marketing students as well as fashion design students. Love that opportunity, and then made a pivot into HR, where I worked for Alexander Wang, and I worked with a lot of entry-level talent, helped them with an apprenticeship program that they were building there. I cultivated that. Worked with a lot of apprentice, entry-level creatives, non-creatives within the organization. Worked a little bit more in higher ed, and now, long story short, landed my way in financial. I'm not a financial advisor. However, I still bring a lot of my knowledge in working with people into that space and helping them career path throughout the organization.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Alana. So lovely to see you and meet you all wherever in the world you're tuning in from. So, similarly to Sasha, I graduated in '08. So, I was witness to all the new building that was occurring at that time. It wasn't until this past summer that I was able to come back to New York and see all the new buildings in place. And it's beautiful, it's amazing. My time at Parsons was incredible, particularly that first year living in the 12th Street dorm or 13th Street dorm and developing friends from all different majors and international friends. And so some of those international connections really set me off onto my path of international connections and conversation and language building and cross cultural support. I also gained, of course, my first internship. I started working in a magazine, really learned to love the art of photo editing, being more of a producer than a photographer. I also opened and started a gallery with that same person who hired me as an intern. So I got my first real professional experience taking leadership positions, curating, being an art handler, learning how to manage a gallery, and converse and network with people who were two and three times my age, gaining that professional experience and really learning how to become my own person, which set me off in a career as a photo editor, post production specialist, pre press specialist, and photo director. So all the things that I've loved, and very interesting how I've become a communication coach and a performing artist, and it seems disconnected, but they all connect. I assure you that.
Thank you both for joining us to share your expertise with our alumni and our current students. So our first question, I'd love your input from both of you. Our question is, what are some ways to explore your values and interests now that you're out of the structured college environment?
Um, I would say it's really taking that time to self-discover. I know we've heard this self-reflect. It's really getting in tune with yourself. I like to do things like meditate, to really get within inside myself to figure out, okay, what exactly do I want? It's really looking at and trying things like, you may not know like exactly what you want to do. Maybe you went after this major and you're like, you know what, I'm working in that field or I'm about to land something in that field. But, maybe before I even commit or while I'm in it, it's really taking that time to try different things, being in that yes period to just try different things and figure out, okay, what is it? Then within there, it's really nailing down and discovering, what your values are, what holds true. And how I identify values is, what's truly important to you that you're not going to compromise by any circumstances. So that could look like your time. Like maybe you value your time. And what I mean by that, how you take that in any setting, it could be on a professional level, where say if you're entering a career for the first time, and or maybe you're already in that career and that there's a lot of late long hours, or maybe you're even considering a position and they're telling you during that interview that there are long hours that you're going to have to spend. Of course, as you're entering into your career, you may have to sort of do that, but as you get further in your career, that might be something that you no longer, you don't want to do that anymore. And that's okay because you're valuing your time. So maybe it's finding a flexible work schedule. And those are the things that you carry forward with you throughout any process without, looking for a job within the job and then finding ways to communicate how you value that. So yeah, I would say really spending time with yourself, figuring out what you love, what you don't love. Even if you don't know what you love, finding out what you don't love is also going to help you get there as well. It's so I really think it's identifying that and taking the time to jot it down. And then once you have that real refined list, and it may shift and change, especially as you enter new phases in your life, no point intended, but you enter all these different times in your life, it will change. Like I'm now a mother. I wasn't a mother before. So my values definitely have shifted based on my personal circumstances as well.
And I'm going to echo what Sacsha is saying. It's about getting in touch with yourself, mindfulness.
Hmm.
And so assessing personal values. If you've never done this before, and I will say that no one ever asked me what my values were until I was probably in my 30s. So I had no idea what my personal values were. There are values sheets, lists that you can access online.
Hmm.
Some lists are designed by Brene Brown or James Clear. He is all about habit development. There's a list of values. Print that out, cut them out. There's different kinds of sheets. Identify your top 5 values. What do you most strongly resonate with? It might be difficult, but if you can narrow it down to at least 5, then you have a greater sense of what is making up who you are at its core level. Because as long as you are aligning with what those core values are, every decision that you make, even if it seems very far fetched, as long as it's aligning with those values, then you are in alignment with the self and you can be content and find joy in every situation. So, for example, these values could look like adventure, creativity, authenticity, self care.
Hmm.
With if you can start to notice when you are shifting from your core values, because that's when you start feeling misaligned and out of place. So always making decisions based on your core values.
Thank you for that. And Sasha, this next question is for you. How can you use your free time strategically to build skills or networks without burning out?
Got it. So using your free time strategically, I would say is first kind of taking a look at your time. So I would say almost the way you would schedule any of your busy periods for work. What's funny is that one thing I notice is I'm like a schedule holic when it comes to work. But when it comes to my personal time, I'm learning how to implement that even into my personal time. So that way I'm building in free time, for myself, for my family, but then at the same time, I'm building in little discovery moment times, as I like to call them, where I'm saying I'm going to intently use my time, this hour, or these up to 3 hours. I believe in 3 hour blocks for everything, to do X, Y, and Z. And you have to really identify what are those things. So say if it is, looking for a position, which could definitely burn you out. That can burn anybody out. It becomes a full-time job in itself. If you're looking for that opportunity or you're considering another program that you might even want to go into, a master's program, whatever have it, and you're saying, okay, I'm interested in these things. So how am I going to spend this coming week to focus on some of these things, but then also factor in my free time? So that way there is no burnout. I'm not spending 8 hours a day on that same thing. It's very important to be, mindful and have intention whenever you approach something and breaking it into smaller steps so it doesn't feel overwhelming. A lot of times when we think about big things or we think about something that we want to do, it's easy to get overwhelmed even by the thought of it and not knowing where to start. But when you're able to sit down and say, okay, this is the big thing that I want to do. Now let me work that back and figure out what are those small steps and then plugging it into a calendar. So that way you're remaining accountable to doing that thing. And then I would also say being celebrating the small steps becomes very important. So even if you couldn't do everything that you were anticipating doing within that hour, it's still celebrating what you did do. The next thing I will say is be open to it not necessarily happening in that hour that you scheduled. This is where the organic part comes in. You might find yourself, hey, I'm taking a lunch and before I know it, I'm connecting with somebody over here that's doing something that I'm really interested in. So being open to actually, you know, speaking with other people that might be out there who, and you never know who might be interested or doing the same thing that you're doing and interested in having a further conversation with you where you will get it on the calendar. So I would say just intention, scheduling definitely comes important. And then lastly, being open to opportunities no matter where it goes. And then being forgiving, even if, you don't get to that task. The important thing is you did it. You put it somewhere and you will get to it eventually.
Mhm. Thank you, Sasha.
No problem.
Alana, next question for you. Is taking a gap year or a break after graduation something that can make sense? How do you explain that to employers and how do you frame that positively?
That's a really great question. In a lot of countries around the world, taking a gap year is completely acceptable and expected, in fact, encouraged. However, America hasn't really ever grasped that. I think there might be some employers that might get it, but it's not very common here. And so I see that there is great value in taking a gap year if you're doing it with intention. So no matter what it is that you are doing, if you're traveling, if you're taking weird side jobs, um, learning new skills, meeting new people, whatever it is that you find yourself doing, you can always identify what was the learning in everything that you did. Because whatever you learned is 100% applicable to any employer. So, for example, if you just spent an entire year traveling the world, you visited 13 countries, from that, you could identify I learned new language skills. I
Mhm.
learned adaptation and flexibility in unexpected and unpredictable moments. I learned cross cultural conversation and appreciation. Like these are huge wins. And being able to identify those things, spinning that story in a way that an employer can see that as making you an asset and a value. Now, if you spent an entire year working in a burger, flipping burgers and playing video games, can you find some learning that if you had a job, sure. But if you're just kind of sitting around playing video games, is that something that you would want to volunteer and brag about to an employer? I'm not quite sure, but maybe there's something there that you've learned. But that is the positive spin, the way that you would spin that.
Thank
Mhm.
you. My next question is for both Sasha and Alana. When you both think back to your first year as a brand new graduate, what kinds of goals felt meaningful or more motivating to you? And how did you go about setting those goals and adjusting them? Sasha, why don't we start with you?
Got it. Well, it was in a different time, in a different climate when I graduated. It was a, it was almost the start of a market crash. at the time when I graduated. So I would say I was already working at a company that was not necessarily my dream company. I was interning there. However, my goal at the time was, of course, to land a position that was meaningful to me at a company that I really saw myself working at. I entered in the design field as a menswear designer. But when the reality hit, so it's also being aware and conscious of your environment and what's happening. I was just thankful that I had an opportunity at the time. There were so many students that couldn't get a position. And, I was trying to even be that asset to them to help them get into the company that I was working at. So once I was there, I really was grateful in terms of just everything I was able to grasp and learn. It was a very small team. So then within there, I was able to further define my goals in terms of, okay, understanding what my values are from early. What I valued was in terms of the creativity at that time. It was in terms of the type of team environment I was working on, company culture, and that was something that I found. So when I was going on to that next company, I was able to really weigh the experience that I got with that company to the next company. And that really became like my check off list. So first step was getting that job. Second step was really getting those core skills that I needed to be a successful designer, getting that exposure that I needed. And then that third step was once I've gotten that, really landing that next opportunity where I felt like it was more in alignment with what I ultimately wanted. So I would say really that was how I set out my goals. At the time, I did not work with like an advisor of anything like that. I can't even recall who my advisor was. But I also, if I had to give any advice, I would say definitely lean on your professors, definitely lean on your career and academic advisors, success advisors, just to help you identify what those goals are. So that way you can take that next step out. It really helps and adds that clarity. So that way you're able to take it successfully.
That's awesome. I
Mhm.
think that this question can absolutely be looked at from a professional standpoint, but also a
Mhm.
personal standpoint.
Definitely.
I graduated in '08. It was
Mhm.
the year of the crash, but I somehow got a promotion. So, you never know what's going to happen to you in your
Mhm.
life. But what was most important to me is now that I actually had a job and I had structure and stability, I was actually able to refocus my attention onto the things that really were super important to me, which was health and fitness. Uh,
Mhm.
Growing up, I was an athlete, I was a performer. Just so self care was huge. But let's face it, during the college years, that priority went out the window. There was just no time for it. I had no money. I was living on Snickers bars. So once I had the time and the money, I was finally able to refocus on self care, get back into health, fitness. I had money to purchase healthier foods. And so that's where I put my energy in. But it's entirely the way you answer this is going to be
Mhm.
completely personal and individual to you. So what's most important to you? Focus on that. And then you have open space for the next thing on your checklist.
Thank you. You both touched on an important topic of identifying your own values. So, what are some signs as you're entering your job search that a job might not be the right fit for you, even if it looks impressive on paper? Alana, can you start with your input?
Absolutely. So I will say that having a holistic health background, I really incorporate that and spirituality into my coaching. So you'll hear that in a lot of my responses. You have to check in with your gut instinct. Listen to your body because your body does not lie. If you get any inkling inside your body that says, ugh, a slight bit of resistance, I would listen to that. It will never steer you wrong. It's once you start getting in your head and you try to be logistic about it and weighing the pros and the cons, that's when we start. There's a risk of going against what's truly instinctual and the right decision. So I have never, my gut has never steered me wrong. I have never taken a job that felt off. And when you can hear that voice that's showing you your highest excitement, that's also a sign to listen to, that's pointing you in the right direction.
Yeah. Ditto. Like everything that you said, I'm very spiritual as well. And listening to your gut, your first instinct is usually always the correct instinct. As soon as you that voice, that thought, first thought you have that comes across your mind. Um, and I would say what I even have to remind myself to do is observe more. Observe more, observe your surroundings, observe the situation, observe the space before you act. Because once you do that, then that's when that voice is really going to tell you. You're going to get that gut instinct, and then you're going to hear, you need to do this or do that, or this isn't it, this isn't right. Um, that's really, to me, I feel your body's way or your mind's way of protecting itself with that first instinct. Um, and then I like to look at signs and keys. So if I get it that first instinct, okay, maybe let me pay attention to that. That second time I see something else that's in alignment with that, yeah, definitely not. And then that third time, I'm like, this is definitely it. And that can show up in multiple different ways. So if you are going after that opportunity, I have to keep going back to that because I feel like that's where we really, sometimes fall into desperation as we are looking for opportunities and we're like, you know what, I just need to take something. And sometimes that may be the case. But if you know that it's a situation that's detrimental and you know that you're not going to grow, you're not going to thrive, and it's not in alignment with who you truly are, which are your values, then you know it's not right. It's not right. So that's definitely something that you have to pay attention to. So I definitely agree with everything that was just said. And it does come with time. It comes with experience and trusting yourself and trusting your gut more. I'm not going to say out the gate you get that because we're blinded by a lot of shiny things.
Hmm.
But if you are a person that really invests that time to really truly figure out what motivates you and what you truly want and not compromising on that, that's going to get you far.
And I would like to also add to that is that you're interviewing them just as much as
Hmm.
they're interviewing you.
Yes.
So asking questions. What do you want your life to look and feel like? What is
Hmm.
important to you in a job? Ask those questions. And if you don't like the answers that you're getting, then you have a
Talk to 'em.
better sense of what choice you need to make.
Thank you
Yep.
both. So you both mentioned trusting your gut, trusting your instinct, but how do you build that confidence to say this role does not fit me, this organization is not right for me, when we're in a specific time where folks are really worried about job scarcity and wanting to be hired as fast as they can? How do you build that confidence to walk away from a role?
So again, when I say experience, it may take, and this might sound contradictory of what I'm saying, when you're entering a field, you're going to go through the interview process. You're going to meet the representative, if you will, right? So what I mean by the representative, think of it like dating. So you got to meet that representative. And that representative may say all the right things. You may ask all the questions that you need to ask. It may be in alignment with everything that you're thinking. You might have a small inkling, but not sure, until you're actually in it. So then once you're in it, do you walk away from it or do you take some of those experiences that you've gained, which is going to give you the experience that you're able to see? So then going into that next opportunity, you're going to already have seen that. You're going to see that type of manager, a micromanager. You're going to see that culture that doesn't value their employees. Maybe there's a lot of turnover. And some of these things you can also research and get ahead of time, which that's a whole nother conversation. But especially going back to the climate and where you are, I'm thinking about even from an international student standpoint, you're up against visas, so it's like you kind of do need that job. And if that company is sponsoring, which is also scarce sometimes, you may need to take that job for a period of time. But if that's not the case and that's not your situation, or you can be in a position where you don't have to compromise, if you will, then go with your gut, for sure. But sometimes going through that will also give you the experience that you might need in order to see what to watch out for, especially when you're on the outside and you don't know much of what is happening on the inside. The last thing I would say here too is outside of an interview, with that particular hiring manager or HR representative, another thing that you're want to getting a habit of is speaking with other people that already work there. Because at the end of the day, they don't have anything to lose. They're going to either tell you really what's happening or that, and it can be anonymously, it could, but that's also where you're going to get some real facts on what's happening, at that particular company to also help make that determination.
I think you said it best. I will share just a personal example because this hasn't happened to me very often, but it might be helpful. At the time, I was living in Orlando and I was working at a clinic on one side of town. And I was also an actress in my other parts of my life and was being considered for a role, but this theater was on the opposite side of town. In order for me to get from one place to the other for rehearsals was a minimum 45-minute drive that was not including traffic. So that was already adding an additional hour and a half to my day of just travel. And I really had to check in with myself and my values. And my values helped me make the decision that as much as I wanted that role, it was going to affect my health. It was going to increase my stress levels. And I know that it's important for me to feel relaxed and balanced and implement self-care. And so that was what allowed me to make the decision of turning it down. But of course, you always have to be so professional and polite when you're doing so. And you can very easily, if you're not sure how to say it professionally, type into Google or Chat GPT, how do I respectfully decline this offer? And it will give you a few different options of how you might word that. Never burn a bridge. Always
Mhm.
be respectful, so that even people talk. Everyone's connected in some way. If you're a jerk to someone, they're going to tell their friend who's running this other company and be like, about you. So making sure that you're always professional and respectful in those acts of declining.
Thank you. Sasha, you mentioned previously that these job interviews you're going on and connecting with these professionals is research that you're doing for your future career. Can you share with our guests just some more tips on how to research an organization that you're interviewing with or even going into?
Yes. So I would say, of course, you're going to start with the company site. You're then going to go to places like Glassdoor, .com. That's a really good resource because you actually get feedback from employees that work there or who have worked there, and they're going to give you some insight into the interview process, into the company culture, into a specific position. If you are interested in that position, they're also going to give weigh in on salary. So those are things, or even I would say benefits. So those are things, one resource that you would definitely want to get, in your search engine. Another one in terms of searching salary. You want to make sure that whatever they're offering, now there's pay transparency that legally, especially in places like New York, I want to say it's statewide now, that we now have to do from a recruiter standpoint, because I do recruiting as well. You have to have pay transparency. So what that means is on that job description, you're going to see a salary band, the starting to typically the mid or in range that they'll post publicly. So then using payscale.com, a resource like that, salaries.com, you'll be able to get a better understanding whether you're choosing to stay in New York or go outside of New York in the states only. That's what's going to give you a good understanding of what, the pay range should be for your industry. So you're making sure that that's fair. Another thing I would recommend is doing something called occupational search, right? So yes, you might be applying for that one particular role, but you might want to know industry-wide, what does that growth opportunity look like? So there's a great resource called onet on online.com, which is also a really good resource for you to search occupations. And it's going to give you basically an overview of what that industry involves or that occupation. It's going to give you the top skill sets that you'll find within that space. It's going to give you, again, pay ranges. It's going to give you also suggested universities to look into if you need to further your degree to get into. Of course, we want you to stay at Parsons or the new school, but if it does require, other certifications, things like that, it will also give you a list of those things as well. So I say take all of that with you to any job interview that you're going to, along with doing, like I said, any type of screening calls as many as you can do with somebody who works at the company. So that way you have a good understanding externally, what's being said about that company. Also, you're having a good understanding internally if you can get at least one to two people to respond to you, their feedback in terms of how the company is. So that way, what that's going to do is inform the type of questions that you ask. That's the reason why doing research is very important. I can't tell you how many times as a recruiter I've come across so many applicants that do not do the research. They barely know the company they're applying for. And this is even when I was at Wing, and now even in the financial industry. And, maybe they were applying for 100 jobs before, and on their cover letter, they're actually putting the wrong company name. Okay, so it's paying attention to detail. It's all of those things become very, very important. And I know this is not a word, but overstanding that the role that you're applying for. So that way you are coming in informed, knowledgeable, and have everything that you can offer to that employer. As was stated earlier, they're not just interviewing you, you are interviewing them. You want to make sure that it's in alignment to everything that you stand for and are looking for.
Thank you. This
No
next
problem.
question is for both Sacsha and Ilana. So through our new school network, students and our recent alumni can connect to more seasoned alumni for networking and mentoring opportunities. Our next question, what are some ways to make networking requests meaningful? What can you offer in return?
So networking is something that I am super passionate about because that is how I got through and had a pretty outstanding career up until this point. And I teach now how to network. And the foundation of that, how do you make networking meaningful, is that you have to connect with the person. Even if a person represents a company that you love and adore, it could be Disney, it could be Google, and you go up to this person all googly eyed and fawning over them, and but you're talking to them like it's a business. You have to shift, you have to pivot that mindset because this is a person that you're speaking to, not a business. So you have to shift from business to business mindset to human connection. How can you have a meaningful connection with another person? This means sharing about yourself, sharing your personal stories, asking questions, lead with curiosity. And there's a famous quote: people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. That's exactly what happens at networking events. People are talking to sometimes 50 or more people in a given night. They're not going to necessarily remember exactly what you spoke about, but they'll remember, hey, I remember that Sacsha person. She was really awesome. I would like to have coffee with her. I don't, it doesn't really matter. Also, working with so many international students here in America, where English is not the first language, there's a huge concern with, I'm not sure what's appropriate to ask. What if my English is really bad? I don't know if I'm going to say the right thing. And I always encourage them, firstly, introducing yourself and say at the beginning, my English is not great. It takes me a little while to think about a response. Just get that out of the way. People are very empathetic. Unless they're an absolutely cruel, heartless person, they want to see success. They want to be able to connect with another person. So asking what you need from the start so that you can have a truthful, authentic engagement. And then always asking how you can follow up with that conversation. Don't leave it there. Continue the conversation. Say, I really enjoyed talking with you today, Sacsha, about financial wellness. Do you think we could grab coffee in a week or two? I'd love to talk with you more. And she might say, yes, amazing. And then you book a date right there. Make sure you find a way to continue that conversation and put the person first.
Yes, yes, well said. Couldn't agree more. Um, I think also the key here is also knowing timing. Um, and what I mean by that is if you find yourself at a networking event, where there's tons of students, there's tons of people, like when I was at the new school, we would run career fairs, right? All the time where you really only have like a second to really get the attention of the employers that were there. So I think it's really important to understand timing and be mindful and realize that this person may be burnt out or talking to a lot of people at the same time. So go back to like elevator pitch. And I know for a fact the new school in Parsons teaches elevator pitches. I would still work career services. So think back to like your elevator pitch. What can you say within that 30 to 60 seconds that is going to get their attention, but then also being mindful and keeping that human quality where it's like, oh, I know you've been speaking with a lot of students. Say if you're like one of the last people to go up and talk to them. I know you're probably tired. I know you've been speaking with a lot of students. Do you happen to have a quick second? I just really wanted to say how much I adore your project you did here, there, and the third. You know, go with intention because especially if it is a networking event, a lot of times what will happen is they'll have a list of the people that are going to be there, that you can get access to. So I would say go in with a plan. So if you know there's 5 people that in fact that you definitely want to talk to, and of course being open to any others outside of that, being intentional with those 5 people, looking for those right opportunities to grab their attention, connecting on a similar level. You never know. Where did they go to school? Maybe they went to school at the new school. You never know. So you can even start from there and talk about that and have that find those similarities. Yes, I definitely agree with the if you are an international student, I would get that a lot, especially when I would do resume writing and development with international students is, the fear of, not knowing the language and not being grammatically correct. Again, I think I fully agree you state that in the beginning. My English is not so good, but I'm super excited to speak with you. And then they might ask, "Oh, wow, where are you from?" Then that breaks the ice. "Oh, I'm from here." And what brings you to the state? Just go with the flow of the conversation, and you never know where it's going to take you. The last piece I'll actually say on this using network techniques everywhere you go. So back to a point that I brought up, it doesn't always have to be at an official event. You'll never know where you'll meet people. So it's being open. You could be at the grocery store, you could be anywhere, and you say, "Hey, I like your dress" to the person next to you in the line. And then before you know it, that breaks the ice, and they're like, "Well, what are you doing?" Funny story I'll share. I was in Party City the other day, no, Michael's, and I was blowing up balloons for something. And I ended up speaking with a lady, and she was like, "Oh, I'm waiting for, a person at the desk." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, they're right over here helping me with balloons. Sorry." And I'm a jokester. So we're cracking jokes. And then she's like, "Oh, I see you have balloons for, and you represent that company. You work at Jovia." And I'm like, "Yeah, I work at Jovia." And she was like, "Oh, I work at Hofstra University and I run their careers program." Great. I have an internship program that I run at Jovia. So again, you never know where connections might happen. And I just surprisingly, randomly bumped into her in line. So it's being open, it's not being shy, and just go back to the human quality of speaking with people again. You never know what will come out.
Thank you.
No problem.
This next question is for Alana. So you've applied to the job, you've gone on your interview, but you were not accepted into the role. What's one way to reframe a rejection into useful information for your next move?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to happen throughout one's life. Rejection is never easy to take. It's very easy to start blaming ourselves, but it's a lot of mental reframing. So, can you identify something that you learned in that interview process? Maybe it was learning all the resources that Sacsha just shared. Maybe it was the first time that you've ever actually researched a company. That's a huge win. Did you learn something new about the industry, about that company, about yourself in the process? Just the interview process itself is a skill to learn and to get more comfortable with. So if you can always find the silver lining um, in every aspect, even if it's a negative one, is something worth celebrating. And then also know that the reason that this occurred is likely because this is not really your path. Maybe your instincts didn't fire off any signs for you, but maybe the universe knew that there's something else beyond. And because of something that you just learned in this moment, you're now better off in the next round. And so, great little phrase to keep in your pocket is you win or you learn. If you can always remember that, you will always find yourself on top from a psychological perspective.
Thank you. Sasha, this next question is for you. What are some practical ways to stay positive and focused if your industry is slowing down or changing?
That's a great question too. Yes, it's very easy to get discouraged. I would say go back to your reason why. What was your reason why in getting into that path or that field? And what is it that you think you could bring to it, that's going to make you uniquely different, and keep you connected to it? And even if that field is slowing down, which this is interesting, what are some other ways you can still stay involved with it? And it doesn't always have to result in a job, a traditional job. And I'll go back to an example of something that happened with me. It was the pandemic. And, during that time, I got laid off and I was laid off for about a year. But I knew going back to finding what I truly wanted and staying connected to something that I've done, which was fashion. I was like, I'm not going to land a fashion job right now. And I'm also kind of looking to pivot into something else. How could I bridge the two together? So during the time of not having a job, that was what I actually birthed my company, New Phase Creative, because it allowed me to take all of my passions and things that I loved about designing and working with creatives and the creative process and working with people and being of service to people, and meld it into something that I now own and can produce and develop, um, in my own steps, which then now has grown my newfound interest into entrepreneurship. So I think it's not always looking like, oh, okay, I have to get a job at that company. Yes, it may not be now, but it will come. You still keep your energy there. But then what can you do in the interim to keep you connected to it, to keep you motivated, to keep you um, passionate about it? So I think that that's also equally important, even if it's on a volunteer level and you're not getting paid for it, because all that comes back to experience on your resume. So making it intentional and things that you could speak to about in an interview.
Thank you so much. And,
No
and then for
problem.
our last question before we open up questions from the audience, how can you leverage what you've already done, even if it's unrelated, to build credibility in a new field? Ilana, we can start with you.
I am living proof of how you make that work. I'm on my third career and you not understand how they're all connected. So my BFA in photography, I worked, as you've already heard, as a photo editor, a pre-press and post-production manager, digital imaging specialist, and then hard pivot to full-time performing artist, singing, acting, dancing, voice acting. How does that connect? From there, moving into the world of health coaching, which then has landed me where I am today, which is communication coaching. Okay, so how do these things connect? If I were to look back on my uh, visual arts career, I learned the skill of management, delegation, having an eye for detail, knowing how to work with creative teams, communication in that kind of setting, absolutely crucial. Taking that to then working in the performing arts, because by the way, I mean, I grew up as a performing artist, so that didn't just come out of nowhere. I did have that background already. But taking the skills as a leader in the visual arts industry allowed me to perform better on stage and on camera because I understood how to direct people and take direction. It allowed me to then be a producer and bring visualization to life. And from there, as a moving into the world of coaching, how to talk to people, how to empathize with people, all of these aspects together, now working in a creative institution as a communication coach, I get to understand the mindset of the artist. I get to understand how to coach a person through something and also be able to guide them in what a future possibility looks like. So, despite what the job is, get to the essence of underneath what is the essence of the thing that it was that you learned. Because you could have been a manager of a Publix grocery store, okay? But you really want to be a fashion designer. Well, there's absolutely a connection there because as a manager, you did X, Y, and Z, and those same skills apply to being a fashion designer. Okay. So if you can identify what those keywords are, you can then adjust your resume and include those keywords, and shift that story based on who the audience is that you're trying to share how those skill sets apply.
Thank you, Alana. And thank you, Sasha and Alana, for joining us this afternoon. We're going to pivot to some audience questions, with our first being, I love that both of you have holistic professional experiences. I received my BA at Lang and just completed my master's in a separate discipline somewhere else. Can you both speak more about blending your academic and professional experiences to cultivate your own unique path?
Um, Let me see. I'm trying to figure out how to best answer. Alana, you want to go first?
Well, I'll say, Sasha, I kind of feel like you've already answered this a little bit, and I did as well, because
Yeah.
us two uniquely having such varied backgrounds have found a way to combine the passions into a unique business. So,
Yeah.
as a communication coach, uh, they seem really irrelevant having an art degree, but then moving into the executive coaching space. Um, so it's absolutely possible. I have a friend here who I like to collaborate with sometime, who has a background in marketing and advertising, but she also has a great passion for holistic health and hormone balancing, specifically for women. And she's launched her business over the last year as an entrepreneur, combining marketing that is in alignment with one's cycle.
Mm.
And it seems completely like, what? How do those things connect? But it speaks to a specific audience. So I think there's absolutely a tie between the two. Maybe Sasha, you can
Yeah,
address
yeah,
how you can connect them.
yeah. I think it's really, yeah, I think it's finding, like, especially if your goal is to market something specific to a specific audience, that might be something that's unique within you that you have, and you've asked a question of, and that's how entrepreneurism happens. It's like I had a client where, well, first I'll talk with me. With me, it's kind of what I was saying, yeah, earlier. I went to school for fashion design. I like to create things. At the under that, I'm an artist, right? I'm an artist, I'm a creative. But then I went into the discipline of fashion design. And within that, I had to develop project management skills. I had to develop, of course, communication skills, sales skills, being able to sell to the buyers and merchant, the merchants and all of that. Um, Power of persuasiveness. I had to I had to understand merchandising. I had to understand all these things, how to work things together. Digitally, how to lay out spreads where they were visually impactful. So all of those skills I've actually now do. I do all of that myself. I'm able to, and even working in the world of the financial space, I do that now. And you know, it's great because it's a great asset, a part of the HR team. No one may possess that skill, but I have it, and I'm like, well, I can develop our marketing, our content for whatever it is we're trying to push out and do, and then I can have those easier conversations with our partners in marketing. So a lot of transferable skills have come out. Even when I went back to the new school and worked as the alumni advisor and then eventually the success advisor. I was a student. I went through the whole process. I understood from the student standpoint of what they may be needing. And then from there, able to develop programming that's around to service those needs. And then that was really what put me into coaching to say, okay, here are some missing key things that maybe school is not fully covering or students might be missing, that I can then fill in the gap in that space to help that professionalism develop to that way that person can go into that field that they want. Or maybe you're in that field and you're looking to pivot out and do something else. So that's how I could really say it. One really quick story, I had a client who was working in the design field, and she was very passionate about yoga. But then also she is also practice modesty. So she was able to, and she wanted to be, she was designing and she really wanted to bridge the two together. So out of that, she actually started her own modesty athletic clothing line. So it was a way to really bridge. That's just one example. But it's really looking at what your interests are, then where do your skills lie within that? Then what are you developing? If it's that new job opportunity that you're looking to propose to a current company you're at, or a business idea that you're looking to get an investor on, what is it really that you can bridge together?
Thank you.
Mhm.
This next question, we touched a bit on it when we were talking about kind of taking the skills that you've learned from a different organization and bringing it into a new role. So how challenging is it to find a job after completing my current master's if it's in a completely different field from my bachelor's and past experience? What should I focus on during my master's to increase my chances of getting an internship? And thank you for your time.
No problem. So I would say focusing on the skills that you developed within the master's program. So like for instance, whenever I'm looking to hire an intern is going through a master's program, a lot of times what we're looking at are those key skills developed. So I work with a lot of MBA, right? People. So one of the things that we're looking at, okay, so within the program, what are some of the courses that you started to take? So even if your bachelor's is in something completely different, where my focus is going to be on that master's. And if you're looking for a role that was within something you would get within that master's degree, that's where I'm going to be looking. So really, things that you would want to try, especially if you don't have enough experience built yet, you're going to talk about past job experiences, but then you're going to put academic on your resume, you would put academic experience. And you're going to then speak to it like it was a job. So you might mention a class and you would say this class. And then you would mention what were some of the things you did, projects that you've worked on, and what were some of the skills that are programs or whatever it is you were working in, systems that you were working in to help you develop that. Because, and that's where you're going to align it with that particular opportunity, whether it be internship or entry level opportunity that you're going after. And then when it comes to your prior experience that may hold more weight with your bachelor's degree, you're then tailoring that content in there to fit the particular position that you're now going after and figuring out a way to really, share what you did there as it relates to that opportunity that you're going after. But yeah, we definitely, are always interested in master's students, and especially if you have, something within your degree that you've worked on that can give you a little bit more of a higher dollar value if, you also possess the skills in some other ways.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
So one question, just going back, Sasha, to your bit about researching organizations. You mentioned a website that someone just wants to know the name of. I believe it was onet.com.
Yeah, it's O and then it's asterisk net, net, online.com.
Okay.
That's one. And there's also Career One Stop. I did not mention that one before. That's another one as well, where it's just to start with occupational search. But I'm always saying Google is your friend as well. Just Google, what are some of the top skills within X industry? And it's going to tell you all of those, it's going to help you get an understanding as to what the industry entails, certain skills that are required, dollar amounts, you name it.
Thank you for that.
No problem.
Our next question, as before we wrap up in a few minutes here, I graduated in 1984 in communication design. I've experience in magazine, international branding, 34 years as a massage therapist in the NFL, five-star hotels, chiropractic. I am a natural coach and have advantage to organize information. How do I step into a wellness director role in a corporation?
Mm, I'll let you
I'll
take that.
jump in here on this one. You have such a breadth of experience. And also, can I just say, I saw your name, Sydney, and I thought it said Lindsay, and I thought, Lindsay Lohan's here. Different career path. Yeah, this is really amazing. And so my advice to you here would be for each one of these careers or jobs, however you want to approach that, what are the 3 to 5 top skills that you utilize the most in each of those? And then start drawing a kind of a line, a thread, and connecting those because I can very well see that as a wellness director, yes, you have to have a background in wellness of some kind, which you have 34 years in massage. I mean, it doesn't get more intimate than that. But also your experience in all these other areas clearly showcases flexibility It showcases probably leadership and organization, all the things that you would need to utilize as a director. So with the framework here, writing the story that connects them all. You know, for example, as somebody who's never had a director of communications role before, I can look back at my entire world experience and see, well, yes, I have communication coaching experience here, but I could probably go all the way back to my um, art direction and photo editing life and pull in some of those moments where I was acting as a director, acting as someone who was delegating, all those specific tasks that I was engaging in on a regular basis. And those 100% would apply to a director role today. So nothing goes to waste here. Everything can be utilized. It's just how you tie that thread together to create the story to speak to the audience that needs to hear it.
Thank you. And our final audience question, what advice do you have for artists in forging their own career path and navigating working for themselves rather than a company or corporation?
I would quickly say that learn to leverage LinkedIn. And I'm even learning to do that even more. And I'm finding more artists and creatives doing that more than ever. I want to say that really started to happen since the pandemic. I saw an uptick in more creatives using LinkedIn. And I will say there's one photographer that I follow, and it started from him looking for internal jobs, right? And he just kept posting his work, beautiful work. And he was talking about his experience and searching, and then it pivoted from that to hire me as a photographer. This is the type of work that I want to do. And he just kept posting his images to the point to where he posted probably once or twice a day. He got other people who saw it, and they linked him to projects to where he took on huge projects working for top design companies and everything. And I actually watched him grow from that. So I would say places like LinkedIn, anywhere where you can post your work and really talk about it, and but it needs to be targeted to who you want it to see. So that's what I would really say. Is it client based? Is it what exactly are you looking to open up? Because so that way it's also figuring all that out as well, and that's going to help you determine how best to post it to get the attention of other people.
Mm.
Go through your personal network. Let people know exactly what you're doing. And then when you talk about your CV or your resume, that's what you're putting. What's the name of your creative agency or whatever you're doing? What are some of the things you provide? What's the service? That's how you're going to start, mentioning it on your resume and talking about it during networking type of opportunities. I hope that
And
helps. Mhm.
excuse me. And my advice would be to utilize your networks.
Mhm.
Look around. Who are you connected to that has a skill set that you desire to learn, that you don't know anything about? Maybe you have someone in your network that is an accountant, and you probably need to learn that if you want to run
Mhm.
your own business. So talk to that person, ask questions, uh, collaborate with people on things. There are people who I know are running businesses that are doing pretty well that I want to learn from. And so I jump in and say, hey, how can I work with you on a project? And then we collaborate, and I get to learn from the inside out what they're doing. So just look around, build those skills. I totally agree. I think LinkedIn is awesome, especially LinkedIn Learning. If you have
Mhm.
access to that, there's so many certifications that you can get. If you have a lot of downtime on your hands and you're looking to grow and learn, that's a really awesome place to start as well.
Okay. Thank you both to Ilana Labourene and Sacsha Flowers Calixte for joining us this afternoon. We will circulate this recording along with their professional contacts if you are interested in reaching out and scheduling a coaching session. You can find us and more content on thenewschoolnetwork.com, and we look forward to seeing you at a future event. Thank you and enjoy your afternoon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.